In 1989, while filming a commercial for Canon's new EOS Rebel camera, 19-year-old Andre Agassi immortalized his famous tagline, "Image is everything." These 3 words soon came to define the young American tennis star, but they also spoke to the corporate ethos of his official racket sponsor. For the Belgian racket company Donnay, brand image was indeed everything, one that they established by equipping the biggest stars of the sport's golden age. Once the world's largest manufacturer of wooden tennis rackets, the abrupt exit of their former poster boy sponsor, Swedish star Bjorn Borg, led to their eventual bankruptcy. By the late 1980s, Donnay, rebuilt under new leadership and reeling from its recent decline, sought a new endorsement to salvage their brand image, and they found that in a young Agassi. But what seemed a surefire way to revitalize their flailing business turned out to be a disastrous gamble. The same year that he appeared in the famous camera commercial, Agassi escaped his endorsement obligation through a defiant move, a convincing image that's been repeated by other players to this day. This one-off instance of deception reveals the larger story behind the collapse of a once dominant company, one that's since faced lawsuits, shuffled between various greedy hands of corporate ownership, and consistently lagged behind in an evolving marketplace, leaving them far from their former ruling position. For Donnay, image was everything, and their inability to maintain that image caused them to lose just about everything they once had. In the early 20th century, when wooden tennis rackets were the norm for recreational and competitive play, a little-known Belgian company that had nothing to do with the sport came to corner the market. Founded by Belgian businessman Emile Donnay in 1910, his namesake company began by manufacturing wooden tool handles. Headquartered in the small town of Couve, Donnay capitalized on the valued regional export of ash wood as the basis for their product line. The small family-owned company, with just 6 employees, eventually expanded to manufacture other sporting goods like archery bows, and in 1934, tennis rackets. Donnay's rise coincided with a mid-century boom in the sport's popularity, which in time allowed them to expand from a local company, which partnered only with professional players from Belgium, to a global brand. From Rod Laver to Margaret Court, the era's flagship champions all came to use Donnay rackets, but it was a little-known Swedish teenager named Bjorn Borg who would soon come to become the company's most profitable name. His 1974 French Open title had brought him to the public's attention, and Donnay's. Taking the advice of his fellow star and Donnay user, Rod Laver, Borg famously switched from his partnership with Slazenger to the Belgian brand for a then eye-popping $5 million endorsement. From 1975 onward, the Swede wielded Donnay rackets to win 62 tournaments, including multiple Grand Slams, cementing himself as the greatest male tennis player on the planet. As the face of Donnay, he made the company appear just as unbeatable in the racket market, as they went on to produce upwards of 10,000 rackets a day and over 1.5 million a year. The company's success was undoubtedly tethered to the Swede, for better and, as they soon realized, for worse. In 1981, following his defeat in the US Open final, Borg made one of the most unexpected moves in the sport's history, stepping away from tennis in his prime, at just 25 years old. The sport would soon lose its most dominant player, and Donnay, its most valuable asset. But even before this catalyst moment, the company already paid the price for refusing to adapt. For decades, Donnay had thrived in an era when wooden rackets ruled the sport, but new materials were about to take over. French player René Lacoste popularized the metal-framed racket in 1957, which Wilson patented a decade later, leading to the steel Wilson T2000. Players like Billie Jean King and Jimmy Connors were early pioneers, proving the success of metal rackets as they both went on to win Grand Slams. Later, aluminum and carbon fiber arrived as new alternates, gradually phasing out the older wooden frame designs. The year that Borg retired, in 1983, was also the last year that either a male or female player would win a Grand Slam using a wooden racket. But despite all this, Donnay remained committed to their increasingly out-of-date approach. In 1980, they produced a measly 3,500 rackets using the composite graphite material that was now the norm, while continuing to make new wooden rackets up until 1986. As a spokesman for the Belgian Wallonian government said, after the company failed to negotiate a new endorsement deal following Borg's departure, it all went downhill from there. From nearly 2 million, the company's production output dropped to a mere 800,000, downsizing to nearly half of its former staff, and landing itself into $35 million of debt. On August 12, 1988, after 4 straight years of losses, Donnay declared bankruptcy. Its eventual savior came in the form of a self-made French millionaire named Bernard Tapie. A former pop singer turned home appliance salesman, Tappy made his fortune buying and reselling struggling companies, including large sports manufacturers like Donnay. A month after its bankruptcy, Tappy bought a majority stake in the Belgian company, sharing ownership with the country's regional Walloon government. The Frenchman came in with a grand vision to revamp Donnay. It would require them to fully adapt to the new market for graphite rackets, but also to secure another promising star to revitalize their brand image. So Donnay, down on their luck, decided to place all of their proverbial chips on an up-and-coming American teenager from Las Vegas. For the company's executives, it must have seemed like they had just hit the jackpot. Instead, they got a wild card. With his denim shorts, dyed blonde mullet, and fiery attitude, Andre Agassi emerged as one of the most exciting new prospects in tennis, reaching number 3 in the world rankings in 1988. But he was also known for his erratic and unpredictable nature, no better seen than through how he treated his rackets. Until then, Agassi had only used his trusted Prince oversized graphite racket, but Agassi's then coach, Nick Bollettieri, negotiated a $6 million endorsement deal with Donnay to use their new Pro 1 graphite racket for 5 years. It was easy to see Donnay's rationale. Just as Bjorn Borg had helped the brand to skyrocket, as a rising young talent with notoriety and public appeal, so too would Agassi. Or at least, that's what Donnay thought. As it turned out, the company's eye-popping payment did little to endear Agassi to the new racket. He's since described using the Pro 1 as feeling like playing left-handed and like he suffered a brain injury, considering this switch partly to blame for his career slump at the tail end of 1988. After winning his 6th title of the year in August, it would be over a year before he'd win another one. Despite being the top seed in the US Pro Indoor Tournament in Philadelphia, Agassi lost against fellow American Tim Mayotte in the semifinals, a result he blamed on his Donnay racket. But a month later, he would cause another racket, in every sense of the word. Upon Agassi's arrival at the Champions Cup in Indian Wells, California, something clearly looked different about his racket. Bill Shelton, Agassi's agent, said that his player was using a prototype Donnay. In reality, it was just one of Agassi's old Prince rackets, done over with a hastily performed paint job to pass it off as a Pro 1. This bold act of deception by Agassi's camp prompted a Donnay representative to call the decision immaturity on their part. Despite facing constant questioning by press at the tournament, Agassi refused to confirm that week whether the stunt was true, even as he advanced to the quarterfinals in remarkably more confident form. What began as a doctored racket, violating an endorsement deal, and betraying his lack of faith in the brand, would eventually be sanctioned by Donnay themselves. As Agassi would later confirm, the company soon gave in to his wishes by designing a custom racket for him that resembled the qualities of the Prince rackets he preferred, a seeming admission that even their star sponsor didn't even believe in their product. As time would show, neither did the company's owner. Despite his initial grand plans for Donnay, Bernard Tapie would sell his majority share in the company for over $16 million in 1981 for an even grander business plan, financing his, ultimately fraudulent, purchase of Adidas. As for the company itself, despite Agassi winning his first ever Grand Slam title at Wimbledon with his custom Donnay in 1992, the company's production output by that point had dwindled to a mere 500 rackets. The following year, Agassi ended his Donnay endorsement for a new racket deal with the brand Head, which would turn into a career-long partnership. By 1996, when Belgium's Walloon government sold its stake in Donnay to private equity, there were only 23 employees left in its main distribution center in the town of Couve, a far cry from its previous workforce of 600. In more recent years, under ever-shifting new leadership, Donnay has attempted to reinvent themselves, with little success. In 2010, 100 years after the company's founding, 2 longtime Donnay racket users in New York revived the brand using a new patented lightweight graphite technology called Zencore, signing 20-year-old Belgian women's star Janine Wickmeyer after her run to the 2009 US Open semifinals. But history soon repeated itself, as speculation ran rampant that she, like Agassi, was actually using a doctored Dunlop racket, posing as a Donnay with impunity. In 2016, after falsely using the likeness of doubles champion Bethany Maddox-Sands in their advertisements, Donnay was sued for over $1 million. Hobbling along to the present today, with its rackets and history virtually unknown to the newer generation of players, the name Donnay brings to mind only a distant image of past market dominance. And by this point, perhaps it's best it remain that way. Now in retrospect, Donnay's misguided attempt to retain and later regain market relevance was inherently flawed from the get-go. Rather than continually investing in and remaining at the forefront of racket technology, the company squandered away its success due to its failure to innovate and only staying course with what used to work, instead choosing to chase success by throwing money at expensive and flashy spokespeople. This is obviously wrong, right? Well, if you're a tennis player, think about your own game. How often is it that you're unhappy with your strategy? Specifically, your shot selection, where a lot of the times you just feel like you're hitting the wrong shots at the wrong time. It's of course easy to just stay the course, repeat the same tactical mistakes, and not improve. That's what most people do anyway. But if you're serious about learning how players like Djokovic always seem to be in position to hit the perfect shot at the perfect moment, and learning how to easily incorporate that exact strategy into your own game, then today I'm excited to tell you about the new rules of singles by my longtime friends at Fuzzy Yellow Balls, the sponsor of today's video. You can check out the new rules of singles by downloading the Fuzzy Yellow Balls app, link in the description. And within, tennis analytics expert Craig O'Shaughnessy, who has extensively worked with Novak Djokovic and other top pros, shows you the 20 new rules, new strategies tested and shown to produce the highest winning percentage. Plug these strategies into your game, and you'll immediately start hitting the right shots and win more matches. The new rules of singles also comes with 3 amazing bonuses. Crush pushers with analytics. Craig shows you the data-driven strategies for beating a pusher in a way that allows you to play smart, aggressive tennis that limits your mistakes. Big point strategy. When most players play a big point, they rely on their gut. Craig relies on the data and shows you how to save break point, convert break point, win tiebreakers, and close out a lead. And finally, the practice court is broken. Craig uses this line to describe the fact that most players practice the old rules, the old strategies that are inferior. So in this bonus, Craig gives you a new practice plan that lets you practice the new rules, the new strategies that will win you the most points. To check out the new rules of singles, just click the link below to download the Fuzzy Yellow Balls app from the App Store.